So here we go. You're on.
Hello, everybody. One second as well. I'm just going to pull up on my screen so I can follow it. Would you rather I share my screen so I can scroll through the slide as I talk?
I've got everything all melded together, so I prefer to just keep going.
Okay. Well, this is a little presentation Derek and I worked on to introduce you all to the East River Watershed Research Institute, where we do our work is in the Salt Meadow Sanctuary of Guilford, Connecticut, which is overseen by the Nantucket Audubon. It's this sanctuary that inspired the work that we're doing and that we're trying to do in the future. Carl, if he wants to interject and tell it, has a little story that you've probably all heard about how the Salt Meadow Sanctuary came to be and why we're doing all of this.
Actually, the Marsh area that we're doing this survey work in was donated by Ann and Wolsey Conover, who were members of my board of directors on the Baldwin Outdoor Education Center. And she informed the board that she and Wolsey were donating this property. And one of the other people on the board was Dan Sinati, who was a member, was the only member of National Audubon Society. He turns and looks at me.
So as Carl mentioned, a big part of our research and our mission is to do with sea level rise. And through the research that we're doing, we hope to answer the following questions. How much and how fast is sea level rising? How will this rise impact the salt marsh ecosystem, not only at the sanctuary, but along the entirety of the East River? How might these marshes migrate in response to sea level rise? Do these responses apply to coastal marshes statewide? What are the future financial impacts of sea level rise on the people of Guilford, Madison, and beyond, their businesses and their communities? What areas of Guilford, Madison are most vulnerable? And how is, most importantly, for some people, for a lot of people, how is sea level rise going to affect your lifestyle and your wallets? This is our current organizational chart for the Institute. We have on our executive board, our president, Dr. Robert Zant. He is the provost at Southern Connecticut State University. Our own Dennis Urdman here is the vice president. Susan Weber is our secretary, and Tom Gearson is our treasurer. Some of these other positions we are currently working to fill and working to define. Director of Field Study, I believe, is my current title. And these are all of our studies, which I'll get into in a moment.
And Derek is our executive director.
Yeah, sorry, Derek, I didn't mean to leave you out.
No, no worries. No, we're good.
And our board of parties and our partners I'll also get to at the end.
I think while we're on this page, it would be nice to highlight a lot of the work Carl has done to secure that big box of partners over there. We can thank his excellent networking to finding so many people to help make this happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Carl has done quite a lot of the legwork to get us to where we are now, and continues to do a lot of the legwork. Moving into the work we do, we first have our aquatic survey. That slide. Our aquatic surveys, at the moment, the aquatic survey team records the plant and animal life living along and within the creek that runs through the Salt Meadow Sanctuary. And these are surveys that are held twice a year on our field days that meet in the spring and in the fall, generally in May and September, I believe. We have our bird surveys, where they do the same sort of thing, except they're looking at the bird life. They tend to go out earlier than the other teams because we end up disturbing some of the birds and flushing them out. They also come to the September and May field days, but they also go out over the summer and in the winter. Line, transect, and quadrat sampling. So a transect, for those who don't know, is basically just a line that you follow that you're doing your observation and your sampling within. In the right photo, you can see the yellow line. It's a 100-meter line that we follow when we're taking our sampling. And the quadrat that we're using is just our sample area for each space that we take samples from and do observations within. And for us, it's just on the left, this white square. It's a 1 meter by 1 meter survey area. And what this team does is they record the plants and animals living in the salt marsh along the transect line. They make 10 observations, which means they put the quadrat down 10 times, once per meter, and make the observations within that quadrat. And these are also conducted twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. The forestry survey team monitors the overall health and mortality of trees living along the edge of the salt marsh. They quantify tree health by measuring crown back, which is basically the percentage of branches in the crown, the outer portion of the tree, that are dead. And these also take place in our September and May field days. Derek, did you want to explain some of the drone survey? Because I know you did the most on this portion.
Yeah, I like to talk about this. So I just recently graduated from Southern Connecticut State University, and I incorporated this drone survey into my undergraduate thesis there. And this is, I don't think Scott joined us tonight, but that was my advisor from Southern, and he's going to continue staying involved as a board member, and he's going to be the one dealing with drones in the future. So what we do with the drones is essentially we're collecting photographs and meshing them together to create a map out of them. There's a nice little picture of the type of drone that we're using. These are propeller styles rather than a fixed wing, and we're only working at lower level altitudes, not taking large scale airplane style photos of an area. Go on, next slide. So just to highlight here, the drone research is overall relatively new, but there's been enough scientific evidence to suggest their usefulness for data collection. So this is part of the literature review clipped out of my thesis, just to highlight those key themes that they're effective tools. They can be effectively used to identify vegetation, and they're recommended as a supplement for the type of work that we're already doing at the site. You can go next slide. So here's an example of some of the maps that we produced. You can just take some photos and see a normal map you would see 2D, but we used a software called Pix4D, and what it did is stitch together those photos. And if you look at that one on the left, the 3D orthomosaic, so we literally produced a model of the site, and not right now, that's just a photo, but using the software, you can zoom in and out, you can make measurements. Once you georeference the location, it becomes another way to track changes in the marsh. On the right over there is just another representation. That's a digital surface model. Not the same thing as the digital elevation model, but similar. So the surface model you might use to maybe identify crown dieback, like Tyler was talking about, density of vegetation, whereas an elevation model would be looking at the ground and height. Next slide. So here's another example just to show 2 points. I threw this in here. So using satellite imagery is a pretty effective means of analyzing a survey area. The reason you would use drones rather than relying on satellite imagery is a drastic increase in resolution of the photo. So you can get an accuracy of like 5 meters off if you're looking at satellite, relatively new satellite imagery. Whereas using this drone in a GPS system, we can get down to centimeter level accuracy for a point on the ground. So I also wanted to point out the resolution. If you can see where I zoomed in on these photos, on the left, I believe that one was 50 meters in the air. On the right, we were up at 33 meters in the air. And you can see by zooming in, the resolution is so high, we can identify blades of grass on those photos. So that was just to really emphasize the quality of the imagery that's being produced. Also, I wanted to point out real quick, the research is evolving as we are learning. So if you look on the left, you can tell that a lot of the vegetation is not really visible. It looks like it's died back. This is just an example of how we may need to shift timing of the data collection, how we may need to adapt to make this usable data that we can analyze and interpret results from. That's good.
All right, well, one of the most exciting things that we have going on now that we've officially formed the Institute is in 2022, we are hoping to bring some brand new initiatives to the table. Some of these, the sea level rise, soil survey, fish survey, we are still actively making SOPs and QU APPs on, but the water quality monitoring is something that we are actively participating in starting very soon. We are an official partner of the Save the Sounds Unified Water Study Program. Thanks to recent grant money that we were generously given by the Guilford Foundation, we were able to purchase the equipment necessary to participate in this, and we are very excited to be partnering with them. Next slide. Now, these are some of our partners. Carl, as Derek mentioned, has done a lot of great work and getting a lot of different people involved in this. Carl, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about some of the people involved. I know you know some of them better than Derek or I.
No, they're all people that I have worked with for a number of years, back from when I was working at Sound School and developed all of these relationships. So, and we're trying to get both university students and staff and faculty, as well as high school students and staff involved in these research projects. So we're trying to get them to register actually starting now with which particular components like water quality or the line transect studies they would prefer to work in. So that's what we're starting now, actually.
We are very lucky to have some of the people at these organizations involved in this project, not only people from Inuktitut Audubon like Carl and Venice, but also Dr. Scott Graves, as Derek mentioned, at Southern, and Dr. Razan from Southern as well, and Juliana Barrett from UConn helping us on our board.
Yeah, we've got Sharon Kahari from UNH, University of New Haven.
Many people. Next slide, please. So what it all comes down to is how you can help and how the community can help. We are in need of volunteers, both in our field research, and as I mentioned earlier with our organizational chart, we have administrative roles that we need filling. We are a not-for-profit group. We are actively working towards 501c3 nonprofit status with the IRS. And so the only way we can keep our work going is with generous donations in the future and through grants that we're hoping to achieve both statewide and federally. Next slide, please. And if you want to get involved, the best way to do that is to join our team on our field days in September and May. They are a lot of fun. That's how I started. Derek invited me to join last summer, and it was a lot of fun. You get to work outdoors, you meet professionals from across our partnering organizations, you learn valuable skills for working out in the field and in data collection, get to talk to a lot of great people. And during our spring and fall sessions, we usually try to provide lunch as a little thank you for everybody who comes out and helps us and gets dirty in the mud with us. And soon we will be looking for college students in particular who are interested in potentially paid, hopefully paid summer internships, helping us collect data for our water and soil quality surveys, including our water quality monitoring that we are doing with Save the Sound. That's what I got.
One thing I would like to add in terms of the importance of the study, the data that we collect actually gets collated, compiled, analyzed, and then will be put into an annual report. This annual report will be provided to the citizens of Guilford and Madison. Also, it'll be going to town agencies, commissions, to town planners, also regional planning agencies, EPA, the Connecticut DEP, and so forth. We'll be getting this information specifically to put into the development of resiliency plans and marsh management plans. So you'll actually be helping in a big way to provide information to the rest of the citizens of our communities. So we can use your help. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Does anybody have any questions? If so, you can unmute yourself and ask.
I was just wondering if any of the findings are available yet.
Yes, they are, Lauren. Actually, we've got information from the 3 sessions that we've already conducted. We could use some help on identification of some things. So if you would be willing to help out in that area, that could be done on that day. We're also trying to set up a team that will take the data that we have and look through the photographs that are matched up with the data to confirm identifications and so forth. So
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Yep. I'll give everybody my email address so that if you have any questions or want to follow up, it's real simple. It's my name, Carl R. Harvey.
Carl, put it in the chat.
Okay. You gotta teach me how to do this. Okay, to everyone, message.
I
Okay.
can
Okay,
throw
I'm gonna mute you,
your,
Carl.
Derek, and my email in there.
That's a good idea.
All right, let's go on to the first bird quiz. Size them up. Smallest to largest. Here you go. Towhee, kingbird, yellowthroat, house wren, great horned owl, sharpie, wood duck, and American kestrel. And we'll give you a couple minutes to work on these. You want to chime in with what you think is the smallest, unmute yourself and do so. Or put it in the chat.
It's got to be wren or yellowthroat, the smallest.
Yes, but which one?
Which one? I have wren as the smallest.
Largest is probably easy. What's next largest? Well, we'll get all the answers after the next set of slides with our new presenter, Donna Lorello. Donna, you can unmute
Hey,
yourself. There you go.
I haven't done this in a bit. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So I have to send a little shout out to a friend of mine, Monica. She took me on a trip and a few other spots, and we were tooling around. We started off at one spot, and I know I'm going to massacre this here, the Manasquan Inlet. And I took a photograph of the early morning sky. It was not this pretty. I ended up, it was so dull. I did some digital work on it. So this is a manipulation of a photo, and I just really just dragged up all the contrast and color and really just kind of made it pop. So this is far prettier than what was actually there. Just a little fun shot. While there, there's an area of the beach that's marked off. There were these terns that were engaged in mating behavior. It was really quite funny because this female just wanted nothing to do with the boy. He's trying so hard to get her attention, but she left. Next, please. I just totally fell in love with the skimmers. I could have probably stayed there all day just watching the skimmers. they're really quite an interesting bird. They're like large tern, and really watch them maneuver around. Those bills are hysterical. Next, please. There was also a pair of oyster catchers. Whoop,
I'll go back.
back one.
Got it?
Nesting oyster catchers that were there, and this was one that left the roped off area, and it just was a lucky shot catching them just landing down on the beach closer to the tide line. Next. And the terns were just, I don't know how many pairs were a part of this little colony, but it was really quite active, catching them early in the morning, bringing fish in. They had not, I don't think there were very many nests that actually had eggs in them. There were no chicks at that point, but they were actively courting. This bird was bringing a fish in. I'm sure he was trying to woo a lady. Next, please. We also went to the Ocean City Welcome Center. This is a really cool place. If you're in the New Jersey, birds are all over in this area, and interesting area. It's literally right off the bridge. And then there's a walkway on the lower level. We were passing by, and this glossy ibis was sunning itself, and just captioned this one. Next. Next slide.
I went to the next slide.
Whoop, there it is. A little slow on my end. These are yellow crowned night herons, and they did have chicks, and really nice close-up views. Really a nice spot to get close looks at them. And if you're not convinced that birds were dinosaurs at some point, I don't know what would convince you. This mom was taking care of 3 little ones. Even though she didn't have anything to offer, this chick was constantly harassing her, begging. Next, please. And I just love these little guys. They just kind of hunkered up against each other, and I don't know, another one of those photos I could say, caption this.
Bad hair day.
My brother has some obnoxious things to say about that one. I'm not quite sure which species this was, if this is the yellow crown or the black crown. I admit I get them confused. But this was looking off the bridge down into this area. It's a rookery, and assorted species were collected there. And next, please. There was a pair of white ibis that was nesting. There was behind this bird, down into the darker area, there was a nest with chicks in it. I'm not sure of the history of it, if this is the first time these birds were breeding there or not. Something I'll have to sit down and get a little more background on. But this is the first time I've seen this species, and again, another very interesting bird. And one thing I loved about this particular spot was birds were just literally flying right by your face. So for me, it was a great opportunity to practice some flight photography. This is a great egret, and it had come in so close that I couldn't back off, so I clipped the feet on this shot. And next, please.
You got it yet?
Looks like she froze.
I guess it's taking a little longer on my turnover.
Did we lose you, Donna? Oh, dear.
It came up on the screen that her bandwidth was low.
Oh, she's still there.
Another ask, don't know, sir, or there, but
Donna, are you there? Well, from the
Haven't-
photographs, we can tell that she's kind of fond of skimmers. They are a strange looking beast. All right, Don, if you can hear us, thank you. We'll see what we can do the next time. At any rate, here are the quiz answers.
now my computer's hating me tonight.
Uh, so how did you do, folks?
I got the owl right.
I thought a towhee was bigger than a kingbird.
They're very close, but the kingbird is slightly larger. Good call, Amy, on the wood duck being second largest. They don't look that large in the water somehow. Bobby, well done. Nathan, you too. Stephanie,
What kind of prize do you have for them, Dennis?
thank you. Well done. There's the prize. Right here we have some anagrams. Some are relatively easy and others not. Give you a couple minutes to work on these. If you think you got it figured out, you can put it in the chat, like number 2, and then what you think it is. All right, we'll get those in a minute. Because now Nathan is up with his description of his time spent at the Hog Island Audubon Camp for teens last summer. You want to mute yourself, Nathan, and carry on?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Reese. I am currently a junior at Southington High School, and I was the proud recipient of a scholarship provided by the Mononkatuk Audubon Society about 2 years ago to go to Hog Island Audubon Camp. Unfortunately, the first year got delayed because of COVID, but I was actually extremely lucky to still receive the grant the next year, so I was able to go. And last summer, I took the trip out, and if you could see on the picture, I actually stayed at the place where the number 1 is, and it's connected to the main Hog Island by a tiny little land bridge, but it is not connected to the mainland, so it is a true island. Next slide. So this is just a little about the kind of general area, the mainland. I actually spent a few days there before I went to the actual camp, and it's super cool to see how distinct the features are and how different Maine is than Connecticut, even though they're so close. One of my favorite things is the rock formations, and I was also amazed by just the amount of bald eagles that I saw within the first day. We really don't get many where I live in Southington, and I must have seen like 15 in the first day, so that was crazy. And I also saw a lot of heron. Next. So this is kind of the main base part of the Hog Island camp. It looks a lot smaller than it is from the mainland, but there are 2 main kind of common areas that everyone gathers around. One is the pavilion and one is the mess hall. And as you can see on the little pontoon down there, that's how we got to and from the island. And so we arrived there and they took our luggage, and then we did greetings and everything, and they led us to our rooms. So next. And one of the coolest things about the island is, since it's a completely separate ecosystem compared to the mainland, everything there is labeled, at least as far as the smaller island that we stayed on goes. And so you could see which plants were brought there when and what their uses were for, or if they were brought by animals or if they were brought by humans, which was super cool. And I also wanted to highlight kind of the atmosphere of the place. It was super foggy the whole time, which I actually preferred because I like taking photos in overcast kind of elements, so I don't have to deal with the sunlight glare. And it also, it was just a cool like kind of feeling to see the mist rolling over the rocks. Next. So the first day, we went out to this island called Monhegan, and it was a super cool trip. The way there was actually really like eventful. We saw porpoises, petrels, seals, which I did not think I was going to get the chance to see on that trip. Unfortunately, I didn't get many good pictures of them because we only saw them for about a fleeting moment, and especially with the petrels, they were just super fast moving, and I haven't quite adjusted to my lens. But once we got on the island, it was super beautiful, flowers everywhere, and it almost felt like Nordic. And there were just, we had our first lunch of the trip. I think that middle picture down by an old abandoned shipwreck, which is super cool. Next.
Sorry.
No problem. These are some photos that I took while I was on Monhegan Island. And as you see to the top left, that's a ring-necked pheasant. And then we also saw a group of babies. We assume they're wild. I mean, as wild as something can get on an island, because I mean, the pheasants have to be brung by someone, but they didn't seem like they were captive. And on the bottom, you can see the tern. And I have a picture of a butterfly just to show that like the whole island was covered in flowers. I can't even describe it. Next. And here is a cliff face that we hiked up to. One of my favorite parts about the trip was looking at moss. We had a few counselors there with us that were super into like vegetation and fungi. So they would teach us all about that. And in the far left picture, you could see how there's moss on the rocks, and it kind of creates an awesome atmosphere. And there's just an awesome combination of colors. And you could see top right, the whole cliff face was covered in seagulls, most of them breeding pairs, which is super cool. And as we were keeping a list of birds on eBird, this was probably the best place the whole trip, because you could look out for miles and catch really rare seabirds just flying around that you normally wouldn't be able to see when you're just on a boat. And we actually saw great shearwater, which is one of the birds that we all had really wanted to see. So we were super excited about that. Next. This is a green snake that we saw. And this is one of our highlights of our trip, even though it's something so small and simple. But it let us take pictures, and we got super close to it. And I've been experimenting with macro photography, so this was a great like learning moment for me. And a lot of the other people there had cameras with lenses that adjusted to mine, so they let me borrow their lenses, and they taught me a whole bunch about kind of photographing closer subjects, because I always do birds, so it was definitely a learning experience. Next. So here's like the main focus of the trip, the puffins, and we did get to see them, which I was super excited about. That's what I had been looking forward to the whole time. And the photos in the background don't really do them justice. We were actually super close. It was just a pretty fast moving boat because we didn't want to disturb them too much. But the photo in the front is the best photo I got of them. And the whole island, which is Eastern Egg Rock, which is kind of the main puffin breeding center, where they introduced puffins and then bred the small population back into a place where it could kind of establish itself and kind of like survive on its own. And that Eastern Egg Rock was just full of birds. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Like we saw like 4 or 5 different types of terns. There were gulls all over the island, and of course the puffins. And we got to see the puffins carrying food to their younglings down in the rocks, and it was just an awesome experience. Next. The next day, it actually cleared up, and we got our first day of blue sky. So we decided to go down to the mainland where they had set up birding nets. And on the mainland, I think we got 3 or 4 blue jays, 2 parulas, and a few song sparrows. So they taught all of us down at the camp how to band the birds and what the safe ways to handle them, which I was super excited about because I've wanted to get involved with that. My school's a few programs, so now I feel like I have some experience. Next. And this is just a slide showing some of the warblers that we saw. We saw 109 total bird species, or 110. There was one that we weren't sure on, but most of our counselors could recognize birds miles away by their calls, and it was just amazing. So in the end, one of the most impactful species that I saw were warblers. Before this trip, my biggest problem was that I just can't identify one warbler from another. I could do any other birds, but warblers I had a big problem with. But on the trip, I learned to stop trying to look at them as much and listen to their calls. So one of the counselors there taught me the calls, and now I think I'm pretty average at identifying warbler calls. So that was one of the best experiences I got. Next. The whole island, or Hog Island, was covered in fungi. And once again, I was able to borrow some other lenses that other kids there and counselors had. And I was able to kind of advance my skills in macro photography. And I still have to do some touching up, but I'm pretty proud of these. Next. This is just to show a little bit more of the mainland. One of the coolest things about the trip that I noticed was if you look back at Hog Island from the mainland, it looks completely different than the mainland if you're looking at it from Hog Island, which is only about 300 feet away, I'd say. And it just goes to show how like divided the two ecosystems are. And when we were on the mainland for that one day, we actually had a chance run-in with the founder of the Puffin Project, which is the project that restored the puffins on the Eastern Egg Rocks. So that was super cool. It wasn't planned in the itinerary or anything. So we got to ask him questions, and it was super cool to see the guy that had kind of made everything that we had experienced happen. Next. The next day we went out on a lobster boat, and we learned about how lobster are harvested and what different buoys mean and what lobsters you can take and what lobsters you can't. And it was super hands-on and awesome. And then we went back to the main camp, and we made decoys. I actually still have mine right here. And we learned about how they can be used kind of like hunting decoys to lure birds in, but instead they get them to stay. And once birds see birds lured by the decoys, it's just a chain reaction and more come. And that's how they eventually established the Puffin Project, because there were existing puffins, they were just spread out. And so they could lure them from different islands and kind of concentrate them on that one main island. Next. This is kind of an image into what life was like at the camp. We were always doing stuff. There wasn't a moment that we didn't have an activity planned. We would spend time in the forest with journalists. We would go on hikes. There were people that taught us how to take what we saw and put it in a journal in a way that we would be able to like convey that information to other people. It was just super cool. And in the front there, you can see that's me with 3 of the kids I made friends with. It was super cool to see like other kids who had the same passions as me, because around here I kind of have problems finding other kids my age that are into birding. But you can see an apple borer, which we found down there, which is an invasive species, so we removed it. In the top left, that's a red squirrel that was screaming the entire time. So we had to give him a name, Fred. And then we have the long-tailed ducks at the bottom right. And that was a really important moment because the whole camp got to see it, all like 50 of us, including the staff. And we were all down there watching them, and they stayed there the whole day. Next. And this is the counselor who had the biggest impact on me. His name is Christian Hagenlocker. He actually did a big year, which if you've watched the movie, you'll know that that's when people take a year out of their life to either try to see as many birds as they can from the US or the whole world. And it's kind of a sort of competition. So he wrote a book about his experience, and we had a great time learning from him and learning about how he kind of lived on the edge and spent as little money as possible, but still got like a maximized experience. And I actually bought his book, or actually I didn't have to buy it. He was nice enough to give it to us for free because we didn't have any money. I didn't bring much money. So he autographed it too, which was super special to me. And I still talk to him. So that was a long lasting connection. Next. And that's Christian, just looking at Fred the squirrel on top of the log. And we were fed like amazingly there. On the last day we had lobster, and every day they were coming up with more and more creative things to give us. And each kind of platter had a lesson, and we get to learn about how it's locally sourced and grown. Next.
No, first you have to say something about the Puffin cream puff.
Oh yeah, we had a whole bunch of those. They must have made like 100 of them, and they were gone in 2 seconds. Those are little puffin, like almost Boston cream donuts, and they actually let us take some of those back on the boat to give to our sisters and parents. Those were super cute. And this is just one last slide looking at the main dorm where I stayed. And 1 second, sorry, one of the things I copied over didn't copy. And just my main takeaways from the experience were kind of my increased knowledge in birding related careers, the realization that there are many other people my age that share my interests, and the idea that I don't have to work a job nonstop for the rest of my life, because I don't know, I've just been kind of existential about that. But a lot of the counselors there taught me that they would take breaks, do birding, do things they enjoy, and I learned about how to break up my money so that I could still go on excursions and still explore like the natural world while also making a living. And I also learned a lot about how threatened bird populations can be restored. Next. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone here for making this possible. This was one of the biggest experiences of my life and definitely one of the best. If anyone has any questions, they can put them in the chat. And thank you all for having me.
Or unmute yourself and ask. We will note that there are a couple people that are envious of you being able to do that. And would have loved to have done it when they were your age.
I wish I could share the experience with everyone here.
Dennis,
Jeff,
do you think we can get them to do an adult Hog Island experience?
They do have adult camps. If you go to hogisland.audubon.org, I'll put it in the chat, but it's hogisland.audubon.org. You can sign up for the camps that they have. Jeff Spendelow, can you unmute yourself and say a few words about your experience up there?
Yeah, I got a scholarship from the Solomon River Audubon Society back when I was just starting college, and went up there, and my third day into the session, one of their maintenance men quit. So they asked me if I could stay on. So I worked that summer and the next summer. And like I said, things have changed quite a bit, but it was still a fantastic place to be. Got me interested in birding, and I ended up working on terns, and part of the result of that, in part from talking to Steve Kress back when he was a bird counselor there my second year.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. Here are the Anagram answers. And well done, everybody in the chat. And here's the last one of the quizzes. What birds have these color combinations, patterns? Amy wants to know how they were made. I just made a rectangle and started filling it in with colors from head to tail. They're more or less accurate in the amount of each of colors and shades. And this was not my idea. I stole it from the RSPB. I sent these out in an email today. So if you want to keep working on them while we go through the next set, you can check your email on your phone. And let's take a quick look at UrbanScapes, which is a partnership between Mononkatuk Audubon and CPEN, the Community Placemaking Engagement Network in New Haven. And the partnership started out about 7 years ago, when Doreen Abubakar, who's the founder of CPEN, invited Mononkatuk to her West River Watershed Festival, which is held along the West River in New Haven. And from that, we started working together on a number of other things. And when the Audubon in Action grants were announced 3 years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to apply for one, see if we could start a native plant nursery with CPEN, and we started UrbanScapes Native Plant Nursery. And this is Doreen standing next to me, and some of the kids that we worked with the first year, and Carl and Judy from our board. And the person you can't see behind the camera is Robin. We started with some plants that we got from Audubon Sharon that they had left over from a plant sale that they did. And they were plugs. We repotted them and carefully tended them. We also got some bare root shrubs, potted them up. And the plants grew quickly. It was amazing how quickly they grew, to the point where they needed to be repotted. And during the 2020, the summer of 2020, and then last year, 2021, we've grown about 2,400 plants. There they are laid out. Required some tending, removing weeds that would come in, watering the plants. As you can see, they grew well. And they attracted a lot of interesting insects. And last year we thought, well, let's put up a greenhouse. So the guys dug holes for the foundation. We had some volunteers from Highstead in Reading come down and help us with putting up the greenhouse, laid out the frame for it. We had a work day with people coming in and putting the pieces together. The youth that we're working with were a great help. And the pieces are kind of unwieldy. Took a couple tries. And then we started putting it all together. This was an adventure. The direction said a weekend with 4 or 5 people. It was 4 or 5 weeks with 4 or 5 people putting it together and taking it apart because the directions weren't clear, and then putting it together again. It was insane. It took forever, but we finally got the thing done. And in no small measure, thanks to Peter here and Laura, who came time after time after time and worked with our kids and Nadia, and helped finally get the thing together. That was a ridiculous project. While that was going on, we also had volunteers digging up an area around the lot that we're using for the nursery and putting in a native plant garden. And there's Doreen watching, I think that's, I don't know who that is.
Tyshawn,
That's Tyshawn.
yes.
And in the orange is our friend Peter, the New Haven River keeper, who came to help us. Then we finished up the year with a big plant sale and a celebration day. We had a nice crowd come out. Jim Search from Peabody came and described how to make milk bottle seed germination kits. And we had some activities for the kids that came. And Randall on the left there is a would-be chef and served tacos to people with Tayshawn and Jalen. And then we had the main event of the day with Mayor Elicker there on the left, and all the people that worked on the nursery. And we're grateful to the mayor for cutting the ribbon on the greenhouse with a nice crowd photographing it. And this is Sephra Alexander, who is from the Ecotype Project. And this is a map of the ecoregions, which you can see here. And the latest thing we're doing is we're growing ecotype plants for the Ecotype Project. So each of these colored regions has a slightly different ecosystem, and the plants in that system have a slightly different genome. So they'll do better than plants from outside the region. They're all native, but slightly different. Now, we also did some other things during this time. We had a bird walk for Black Birders Week. This is right along the Farmington Canal Trail in New Haven. And we had Ken Elkins here on the right come down from Audubon, Connecticut at Bend of the River. And he brought binoculars and taught people how to use them. And we had a nice bird walk. We only got 100 yards on the trail and got about 20 species. And the people were amazed at being able to see the birds up close, see the colors. They weren't just things flying overhead. They actually had individual characteristics. It was fantastic. We got invited to Guilford to the Pollinator Pathway tour of gardens in Guilford and Brantford. And we brought some of our plants and sold them there. And we took the kids out on some canoe cleanups in Beaver Ponds Park and West River Memorial Park in New Haven. And this is Beaver Ponds Park. You look at these pictures, you'd never know you were in the middle of New Haven. And the guys were fantastic, helping along with getting the boats in and out, getting people in and out of the boats, and picked up a lot of trash with a lot more to go. One of the problems with Beaver Pond Park is there are two storm sewer lines that flow into the park, so that any trash that goes into the streets and gets washed into the storm sewers winds up in the park, which is not the case with the tires. They get chucked in there by people that are too lazy to take care of them properly. And then we finished up the year with a tour to a place called Hope in Killingworth. And guys got to see the rehab birds up close. And that was a fantastic day. Rob, you want to say anything about that, or?
It was a remarkable day. It was this culmination of an incredibly successful summer and fall season with the UrbanScapes Native Plant Nursery. And it was such a treat to take the guys, Doreen, Kay, to a place called Hope, where they got to learn about the various birds of prey in the area and the threats to those birds of prey. And I, quite frankly, I've worked with these guys for the past 2 years, and I've never seen them pay more rapt attention to everything that Christine Cummings at a place called Hope was saying. They were just enthralled. And another delight was encountering them at an event the week afterwards and asking them, hey, so which birds resonated with each of you? And they had each actually chosen almost like a spirit animal from the encounter, and each of them had a unique bird that they gravitated to, and they had really solid reasons for why they were drawn to that particular creature. And they learned about the threats that are mainly driven by human behaviors to these animals, like rodenticide, car strikes, window strikes, and also imprinting, when people take a bird out when it's young, and then that bird can no longer live in the wild. So it was an educational day, and it was a day that the boys got to connect with creatures that are at the base of why we do what we do at UrbanScapes Native Plant Nursery.
The other thing that struck me is that during the work days at the nursery, whenever a bird would fly by or call from a tree, I would remark about what it was. And we had fish crows and American crows that would occasionally come by and make calls. And I kept talking about the difference between the calls, that on the face of it, you couldn't tell the difference between them unless they were sitting next to each other, but you could tell by the calls. And I don't know how many times I said that, and it didn't seem as if at any time anyone was paying attention to me. But when we got to the cage where the raven, the American crow, and the fish crow were at a place called Hope, Christine asked if they knew the difference between the birds. And they did. I was absolutely astounded. They had been paying attention. It didn't look like it, but they had been. So that was my cool event there. And I think we'll skip this. Nope, maybe not. Here's the video that Pat Lynch made for us for the
So the
Audubon
project is
Convention.
The UrbanScapes Native Plant Nursery. And we started this project because my organization, CPEN, which stands for Community Placemaking Engagement Network. And we've been in this community, New Hallville, for 8 years. About 2 years ago, I started looking at the vacant lot across the street.
Doreen and I were talking about collaborating together with CPEN in Montauk, and she's been involved with the Pollinator Pathway Program. So we thought it would be it might be a good idea to try growing plants together. And when the Audubon in Action grants were announced a couple of years ago, I thought that might be a good vehicle for seed money for a project like this.
One day he shared this project that he found online, which was about growing pollinator plants. And we developed this nursery because New Haven doesn't have a native plant nursery. And if you were looking for native plants, you would have to go far and broad to find them. So we have presently 2,000 plants here.
So the project, from my understanding, has a multifaceted goal. And I really see it as occupying the intersection between environmental justice and racial justice. On its simplest level, purely the growth of native plants so that we are propagating and spreading native plants throughout a region that has a lot of invasives. And this will in turn bring the native insect population back, bring the native bird population back, et cetera. So that's the purest ecological goal. What do you guys enjoy about the project?
I enjoy just I enjoy doing stuff with plants. Like I've always have. Like that's always been a thing I enjoy to do. It's just been fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've really taken to it. And the plants feel your love, I think so.
Like I have like a ton of plants at home, so I'm looking like.
Do you really?
Like I'm gonna bring them because they're getting a little bit too big for the home right now. Like I can see myself grow my own homegrown plants to add into my food to have a better arsenal of plants in my variety, like a good source of vegetation, fresh grown produce. It definitely helps out in the kitchen. Definitely does. The best thing about growing your own place, you don't have to worry about pesticides, GMOs, anything like that. So that's why I really love it
So
as well.
important. Yeah, that's also so important.
What's unique to our mission is that we grow them so that we can also put them in other neighborhoods. So we're able to help create other habitats in other underserved neighborhoods. And so that's what we're all excited about, because the butterfly, the bee, and a bird needs to find a habitat everywhere.
So thanks to Carl and Robin for helping out with the photos, and Pat for the awesome video. And here are your final answers. Easy one. Gina got this one. No, yes. I think this one's a little trickier. I don't know that. This one's trickier too, but the two stripes and the yellow might give it away. And how about this one? So how do we do? I think we'll call it quits here. And thank everybody for being here tonight. And check the website for our upcoming meetings in March. We've got 4 programs scheduled for March, 1 each week. And first one is a native plant program with Roaring Brook Nature Center. So thanks everybody for coming tonight, and stay safe and take care.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for a great program, Dennis.
Thank you.